Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Office Hours Tuesday Focus. This one's date tag 260407, and tonight we're exploring the API and the popular live streaming software mimoLive. And we're really lucky to have a great panel on board, not just to tell us about the software, but to answer all of your questions. That panel includes Ronny, a broadcast engineer and full-stack developer in Tromsø, Norway, who's an old friend of ours on Office Hours. He uses Mimo extensively in his work, and he's going to be demoing for us tonight. And if your questions get super technical, with us also is mimoLive developer Oliver Breidenbach, who, along with his brother, is the force behind the popular software. Also with us tonight is our longtime Office Hours friend, John C. Idelson, Professor Emeritus of Information Technology and Communication Design at California State University, Monterey Bay, another Mimo user of note, and also Peter Sargent, who's a retired IBM engineer who, he tells me, started his career, as he says, on machines whose size was measured in tons. And I'm sure he's now running mimoLive on somewhat smaller, more efficient hardware these days. And of course, there's our regular Tuesday question reader, Cindy Drozdus. So Cindy and everybody, thank you all for being here tonight. Tonight is basically a mimoLive deep dive all the way down to the API, the application program interface, which most of you know. That's the process that lets two or more different software applications communicate and share data with each other. So if you're interested in Mimo in any area, your questions are going to drive everything tonight. And just understand that right now, this is the best place to be in the entire internet, since our Mukana Q&A system is up and running that lets you get your questions into the show for everyone here to address. Let me pop up the Q&R code on the bottom of my screen. For those of you who want to shoot that, you can. Or you can just type askofficehours.global into any web browser, and it's going to take you right into the Q&A system so you can get your questions answered. Okay. Before we dive into Ronny's presentation, I wanted to start just for a second and ask Oliver to give us a very brief overview of what mimoLive is all about, what it's designed to do. So how do you describe Mimo, Oliver, to a newbie to stream in who doesn't know anything about the software?
Oh, well, so mimoLive, Mimo stands for multi-in, multi-out. So we basically take anything in, then mimoLive does its magic, and then it sends it out to whatever you want, YouTube, Facebook, RTMP streaming, full play out, SDI, NDI, whatever you can think of, you can basically output it to. And the magic in between is basically composing graphics in real time. So think of it like Photoshop at 60 frames per second. And also, do all the magic in converting frame rates, scaling stuff. And so it's basically an end-to-end live production system, replaces millions of dollars of hardware and runs on your MacBook Air. So what else could you want to?
That's a pretty impressive array of capabilities. You're really essentially taking a television station and slapping it down inside your computer and enabling you to do all sorts of live shows and other things. So that's very cool. All right, John Idelson, how did you find out about mimoLive, and what do you do with the software?
Well, I found out about mimoLive when I was part of a group called an Apple Distinguished Educator, their title, not necessarily mine. And Oliver was pretty well known in the Apple community for very creative software, probably the most popular stop motion animation program that was on the early Apple computer, another Photomagica. And that was my first introduction. And I think it's interesting because to stop, Oliver, earlier you said today, think of mimoLive as, Photoshop editing at 60 or 30 frames a second. And it's sort of, that's what stop action is. You've got an individual image, you're going to edit the daylights out of it, then create a motion film. But in mimoLive, you're doing it in real time. But once mimoLive came out, there's a previous version on it. But I taught telecommunications, multimedia, television production, and I started old school, Prevo, bus, program bus, preview bus, T-bar. My
some
original
Grass Valley switch or something
used in the original, I think, Arthur Godfrey show, if anybody remembers Nobody here remembers that.
Oh, I do. Arthur Godfrey, one of my mom's favorites. She'll watch it every, what was it, Sunday night or something? I don't remember.
But I think the important thing about Mimo, and as Oliver said, multi in, multi out, that's how I've been able to use it, not only for video production, and there's so much packed into this sort of a powerhouse of capabilities. I had a spinner that I needed to add an animation to, and if you've seen those LED spinners, and it becomes a video. Well, it had a very large, strange layout and functionality that we needed to do it. And I'm talking to Oliver, and he said, "Well, just go to mimoLive, set the canvas, and you got it going." So we see Ronny's back alive. So I will stop stretching.
I'm going to just give a really quick overview of what I am going to talk about and why I think mimoLive is excellent for the task that we are using it for. And to be honest, we are moving away from using mimoLive as a mouse and keyboard or any other controlled appliance. We tend to see mimoLive as a really powerful engine running on our Macs, and just think of it as an appliance more than a software switcher. So I'm going to show you just a few. So this is the AI that created my decks for me. So it's basically consisting of a few building blocks. So we have the queue on deck, which is the cloud service that we are using to control everything. I will show you that in a moment. Then we have our bridge application, which is running inside the network and is in direct contact with Mimo and kind of translates the information going in and out of the network where the mimoLive machines are hidden behind every security measures. And then we are using, as you can see in the yellow box, we use different signals going back and forth from this system, and we use a bridge application for that as well. And just to make jump to this, this one maybe. So this is kind of the overview that we are that we will be talking about. So we have queue on deck, which we call this internal tool. This is not a tool that is for sale. This is not a tool that are shared anywhere. It's just an internal tool that we in our company are using both for digital, hybrid, and physical events. And we use that to communicate everything from rundowns, etc., using WebSockets into the bridge, and the bridge is then doing all the communication in and out of mimoLive. And in and out is one of the cool thing here, because we can sit outside the network and we can actually see all the layers and all the labels and all the information that we are used to watch in Mimo itself. And I'm just going to jump over the bridge, so to speak. And this is our software currently. And in the left side here, and I'm not going to dive really deep into this, but on the left side, we have a rundown, which is actually just doing everything we needed to do in a template-based system that is connected to episodes. Episodes are connected to shows. Shows are connected to clients, and so on. And for each of these, we have different actions that we can apply. As you can see here, we have on activate, we are setting layer sets active, and there's a lot of smart things going on the back end of this, but this reminds us basically of a kind of sequenced bit focus companion. So if you can see on the left side, we think of this as a lot of different sequences or items in the sequence. For every take we do, it jumps to the next item in the sequence and performs all the actions that we are kind of putting in here. So similar to just clicking a lot of buttons on the Bitfocus companion. On the right side, we have a little bit more nice stuff. We have something called a feed, where we gather all the different items that are coming into the systems, much like in a TV station or a radio station for those that have seen those professional softwares. And by no means, this is not kind of a professional software. This is just picking the best of all the worlds we are used to using in our professional life and putting that into a common interface, which is then again controlling mimoLive eventually. So all this is dynamic, as you can see. I have my mimoLive document right on the side here. All these layer sets and information is just dynamically pre-filled into these boxes, and it's dynamically changed if my colleague was changing something in the mimoLive document at the back end. It will immediately populate out to this using the bridge connection, which is real time, or as real time as it can get. So that was kind of the overview of this. And what makes everything that I've shown here possible is kind of three things. One, AI, so we can vibe code this very, very fast. Two, we have a really, really good GitHub repository that Boinks and Oliver and his crew has made for us. That is actually an MCP, which is a documentation for the AI to understand how mimoLive's API is working under the hood. And with those two, we just needed the third one, and that is the mimoLive application itself, which is then running on any machine in our network. And you can, as Oliver said, you can run it on a MacBook Air. I wouldn't trust it unless it's really easy task, because nowadays we are upgrading all our pipelines to enhance media from Zoom, and that means 12 megabit transfer per video stream and up to 60 frames per second. So it takes a little bit horsepower to do all this stuff, at least if you're going to do a lot of different channels or multiple channels. And I think, to be honest, I think we are cutting the show today on a mimoLive instance, but we are using the more traditional
So
way.
Is it fair to say that essentially for our show often and for many other shows, this kind of forms the central hub around which a diverse group of people are reaching in remotely, touching the software in the middle, and creating, switching, adding graphics and things like that to an output that goes out in terms that we would think about as a show of some kind out into the world? Is that kind of the central overarching idea of what's happening here?
Yeah, so mimoLive in itself is really powerful, has really good interfaces, and you can have that on your display, or you can use something like a BitFocus Companion and a Stream Deck to control it, or you can use a touchscreen, or you can have different remote controls for controlling that. But of course, you have to, as Oliver talked about, you have to create these instances, and you have to kind of build them so that they are conforming to the show format that you are delivering. But one thing that is new these days in the beta, and for those that have tested that, I can actually have a rundown in my software. So I can define a template for the entire show, and I can just create a new episode. And the intention is to have a empty mimoLive document, and I just push one button in my own cloud software, and it actually remotely creates all the stuff that I need into mimoLive as you can watch it being created. So those things are magical for our workflows, and really efficient to just apply a new template in our software and hit enter, and then everything get filled up and connected, and we get the YouTube streaming keys from YouTube directly. We can start the show, and as Oliver will be showing us later, we can also do some remote starting of mimoLive itself. So it's just start using it, test it a little bit, but be aware it's really, really powerful.
So that's this idea of APIs, right? When you say you're using BitFocus Companion kind of inside the mimoLive, and it's the APIs that are talking back and forth and essentially weaving together multiple software tools into one suite that you can easily manipulate using things like you mentioned Stream Decks and things like that. So you can pre-program certain effects to happen or certain switches or whatever. Am I getting that again, kind of the core of what this approach is all about?
Yeah, that's the gist of it. And it two-way, so you can have information coming back from mimoLive if something happens there, and there are really powerful automation also inside mimoLive that can be utilized for anything that you would like to do. And the automation functionality, all the normal stuff that goes on in Mimo with all these layers and all these options or possibilities, and even the newest one that can connect to Zoom and have the high bandwidth mode and 60 frames per second is kind of amazing. It's and running on a really cheap quote unquote Mac Mini, for instance, is it's just awesome to see the power that have been put into this. And of course, this is really efficient code and made to run really efficient on the Mac hardware. So it's just amazing to see what these guys have been doing.
It also sounds like it's fully bidirectional, and that we've seen a lot of software that will trigger something on the outside, but this seems like it has two-way communication so that you can not only trigger things, but you can bring in data, the state of things, and kind of keep everything current and together. Peter Sargent, I wanted to check with you and see what you're using mimoLive to do in your world.
Well, I kind of got into it courtesy office hours way back when we started, the first year we started. I was busy trying to I do a lot of volunteer work for Scouting America, formerly known as the Boy Scouts of America. And we had to deal with everyone's at home. But how do you teach knots? How do you do other things? And I wanted to make it look a little bit more professional. And I got introduced to mimoLive, and I do about 3 or 4 shows a week on mimoLive for the Boy Scouts.
Nice. So you're bringing the next generation of young boys off into the world
and girls.
That's right. I'm seeing now. This is a throwback to me being a kid and thinking of the Boy Scouts as kind of one thing, and that. Yep, the world has changed. So excellent. So I wanted to go to John too. You were talking a little bit when we first had the little glitch, but what can you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with mimoLive? And I know you've spent a lot of time working at the Monterey Bay Aquarium and things like that. Are you creating programs in that kind of space?
Well, you mentioned that I'm retired, so I'm doing more coaching of people who are using it. But Peter made me think of back at the very early days of COVID. My colleague Michael Slade, they were going to do a fundraiser for his school, and of course, it wasn't going to happen. And he and I worked on that and developed it in mimoLive. It was multiple Zoom. We brought people in over phones, and turned out they raised more funds doing that virtual one that they continue to do virtually. But my interest in mimoLive is, Ronny, when you refer to it as appliance, I think of an appliance like a toaster. I like the model of mimoLive being appliance. If the appliance was also a refrigerator, an oven, a sports car, because basically it's all those things put together. For me as an academic, there's sort of traditional models of how people produce shows. There's different ways where people interact with the media. When I started crossing the bridge between computers and video production, video people think differently, photographers think differently, and computer scientists think differently. And I think what drew me to mimoLive was it used a model that's very similar to Photoshop of layers and had so much control of what you can do. So I'll be using it in strange ways, just converting different resolutions. We use it at our local city council. We have the city council's chambers. Sometimes they have multiple meetings, so they're using mimoLive and DI Bridge And so they could have one operator actually run two very boring, I mean, exciting city council meetings in the same studio. So it really is an appliance, but I think of more of a Swiss Army knife, although Ronny, you're not Swiss, right? So I don't know how that definition works there.
The Norwegian Army knife, is that a thing even? Oliver, before we get to our Q&A, and we're getting pretty close to it now, you mentioned something about ML Controller, which is a new software kind of thing that you've got going. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
It's basically what we are talking about here is using the API and using AI tools like Claude to create your own customized workflow. And Ronny's appliance is an application of this, and and in the process of creating this document for the AI to know more about how mimoLive works, I sat down and wipe coded my own little application. And the problem it solves is that more and more, like we do in the production on this show here, we will be using computers that are not the computers on our desk. They are maybe in a control room somewhere, or in the cloud. In this case, in Guy Cochran's bedroom, I think. And and then the way you have to do it right now is you have to use remote control software like Splashtop or the built-in Mac remote desktop app to go onto the machine and do a lot of tasks on the machine, like launching mimoLive, selecting the right document, assigning sources and things like that. And I wanted to be able to do this also just through a web interface. And so I've wiped code.
Couple of things I want to do. We're about to get into Q&A, and when Q&A comes up, let me toss up again the office hours QR code here in the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to get a question into the show for our panel, this is live and in real time. You can use your phone to shoot that, or you can simply type in askofficehours.global into any web browser, and you can put your questions into the show. The back-end crew will make sure they're formatted correctly, and then we'll get you on the show. I also wanted to just do a quick little note. If you are new to the show, if you found out because you are interested in mimoLive, but you don't know about the rest of what we do here, you can find out at our main website, officehours.global. If you sign up, you can receive an ongoing list of the guests that are coming in, the shows that are coming up. And we are a 501c3. So if you'd like to help us do what we do, we've been doing this for well over 2,000 daily shows. You can help us out with a donation. We are, again, as I mentioned, 501c3, so just donate something to officehours.global/donate, and you'll help us out. And I think, did I see Oliver? Yes, Oliver's back live again. So, excuse the interruption, Oliver. I'm going to dive right back into your talking about your product.
I used my friend Claude helped me code this, and it's a little app that sits in the menu bar, and you see a little interface that says the status and whatever, but there's an important button down here, which is the web dashboard. So that's something I like. Is it's a Mac app. It's a native Mac app with a HTML user interface. So we can actually access this user interface from all over the world. So whenever I am, I could go and access this through the web browser, and then I can see, okay, the status is mimoLive is stopped, and I can just click that button here, and it will start mimoLive. Now, of course, it's coming to the front. I have to click it back into the back end. I see all the documents that I have on the machine in the documents folder, so I can say, open. I didn't test which one is the least. Let's do the after hours recorder. So it opens up that, and let me switch back to the web interface. Now I see mimoLive is running. The document is open. I can start the show. I have all the outputs, and I can start the outputs, see if they are ready. And I can go and start to Zoom and join the Zoom meeting, and I see all the sources, the Zoom sources, and I can change when I let's just enter the Zoom meeting, request permission, and now I can just select from the list who is going to be in my mimoLive show. And if I select someone here and go, let's say John Kinsborough, and we want to do the screen share. So now if I switch back to my document, I see that it has assigned these Zoom sources to what I have set in my web interface. So
this program that Oliver just showed us, that is a small application that runs on your Apple, and it just communicates with the software itself, so the OS X, the operating system, to show you all these files that are available to open. So basically what you can do, and what we are planning to do in our tool as well, is that you just log in with your username in the cloud service, and your client, so to speak, is then connected to some of the mimoLive instances running around the world. And then you just select one of those, and just like on AWS, you just select which data center you're going to be in, and then you just spin up an instance. And basically what we are doing, at least in our mind, by pure fantasy, is that if you can log in and you just select your data center, like in this case that will be the Guy Cloud running up in Seattle, and you just choose the instance that you would like to use, and then choose the documents that you would like to use. And in the near future, I think it will be possible to also just create this document on the fly via the API. So you can actually start with a totally empty document and then just use the API to remote control and create all the stuff, all the layers, all the input sources, all the output sources, and populate everything into that empty mimoLive document, which is then saved and can be reused next time you log in and start your program. So in that regard, I think mimoLive is at least one of the most powerful. I've seen something similar in vMix and other tools as well, but mimoLive is in my opinion, the one that has taken this far ahead of the competition. And we see that the crew at Boinx, which develops mimoLive, they are really eager to have all these modern new functionality added to the software. And of course, there is also a danger around that. And the danger can be that you are too eager and adding too much stuff into the software. And unfortunately, they have a really big group of beta testers that are testing and pulling and trying and pushing this software to the limits before they release it. And there are so many modern functionalities that we expect a software to have, not only the APIs, but all the other functionality that are so much more advanced and so much more advanced and better than what we see in hardware switchers, even though hardware switchers, of course, is something that you can very much rely on, as tonight's broadcast shows us. Software is inherently a little bit unstable, but as I've said before, if you start thinking of this as an appliance and just get it up and running and then leave it, it seems to be running much more stable, and I think that is a good thing to be checking up.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that we've heard from you, and you've got pretty large installations with very complex needs, and we've heard about what's happening with the Boy Scouts from Peter's side and other people who are doing smaller things. So it seems like there's a huge scalability involved here, whether you have a relatively simple kind of program you want to work inside of, or whether you're doing a lot.
And now with Claude and all the AI stuff, and with the the document that Ronny mentioned, which is the mimoLive API reference that I've pulled up here on my screen share. If you can put that in.
Yeah.
So it's basically this is basically a file that you can download that tells Claude how or any other AI agents how mimoLive works and how you can talk to mimoLive using the API. So the AI can code for you your special workflows that you want. And I don't know how much of the demo I did was visible here, but the point is that ML controller is basically being created using Claude and this information about mimoLive, and it was basically very easy to do. And now it has all the functionality that I wanted to have, and you can make your own, and it will have the functionality you needed or you wanted to have. So that is basically the point where we are now, that you can customize the tools to a degree that wasn't possible before. And you had to hire someone very expensive to do it for you. Or you had to buy very expensive software that was already very customizable. But now you can, I mean, everyone can do it using Claude. Not everyone, but most people can do it, because you can talk to Claude and explain what you want, and then it can figure out how to give it to you. And so it's easy to do small automations, but it also is not hard to do very complex stuff like Ronny did, or like the ML controller stuff. And that's, I think, is the point that I want to make here.
It seems like in this world where everybody's talking about agentic AI that reaches out, that having this API interface that can reach out, kind of natively built to do that, is going to allow you a tremendous amount of flexibility and maybe bring some security issues in the middle. Either of you want to talk about that before we get off into Q&A here?
So the way we secure this right now is, of course, using a zero trust architecture. And zero trust architecture means you basically assume that everything is unsecure, and you set up an architecture over this, and we're using Cloudflare to do this, that adds a single access point, and it secures that single access point. So there's no way to remote or to talk to the computer that I'm using here. It creates a connection to the Cloudflare network, and then we can use that connection to go in, and that connection can be tied down very securely, so nobody can get in. And on the machine, we don't have to worry about securing stuff, because there's just no way to get into the machine except for through this Cloudflare connection that we can, tightly control. The security problem is there's another security problem, of course. For example, the built-in web server could be set up to read information from the computer that you don't want it to be read, but you can easily, and the library I'm using is already taking care of that, easily make sure that that can't happen. So,
okay.
So there is a level of security that we use on top of what we provide with the API. So you can talk to the ML controller through HTTPS, and everything will be encrypted.
So I'm a little bit delayed here, but let's dive in. Cindy, can we get our first audience question in the show?
Our first one today is from Douglas Carmichael. How can you get SRT streams in and out of mimoLive?
And Oliver's going to address that. Oliver?
Yeah, so right now, the release version, you use FFmpeg, and you have to install that, and then you can have an FFmpeg source and set that up so that you that it receives SRT. And I know that some people use it with a lot of SRT sources, so that works. FFmpeg has a little drawback, which is when you drop the SRT connection, it just closes down, and so it's a little awkward to get it running. Once it runs, and as long as SRT stream is okay, it stays connected. With the help of Claude, and we have introduced a native SRT source in the next version in 6.18, and the beta version is right now out. You can go and try it. SRT output is still being worked on, is coming maybe soon. I'm not sure what we want to prioritize, because SRT, there's not many services that accept SRT input, so the use is a little limited for mimoLive sending SRT out. Yeah, we'll certainly address that, or it's on our plan to address that. Yeah.
Next question.
Next up is John Foltz in Sealands Grove, Pennsylvania. Can you talk a little more about how one makes the connections between the API and Claude?
Okay, everybody's going to get on that. We're going to start with Ronny Hofsøy. Ronny?
Yeah, so for those that are coding with Claude or Cursor or whatever your tool may be, an MCP is kind of a instruction set that can be acquired, or you can communicate directly through the MCP and connect into the mimoLive document that you are opened, or multiple if you have. And the MCP is just a tool that you download from the GitHub that Oliver probably will be sharing in the Mocana chat. And you can download it from there, add it to the project or to the main level of Claude helper tools, and just start using it to create code and to communicate with your mimoLive. So, for instance, you can use the MCP to just talk to it directly and say, I would like a two-up with these two people. And basically the MCP should be good enough to just help you and do that live as you speak. But the way we are using the MCP is not that way. We are using the MCP to assist the software development iteration, so that we can have a good understanding of your documentation, and then use the MCP to help us create better code that is then saved and used in the system that we are developing. So we are not inquiring directly live using the MCP, but we use that as a source of truth to be able to develop the code more rapidly and correct without any glitches, or not at least as many problems that we could have without using the MCP.
John Idelson.
Well, I just want to follow up, Ronny, because you were talking about being able to just talk to it to do it. And change happens on the edges of technology. So looking at what you're doing is pretty amazing, because you could say, take camera 2, it would take camera 2. I go back to my first classes. We had a director whose hands didn't touch anything, maybe the script. There's a TD pushing buttons. There was an audio person doing audio control. There might have been somebody rolling tapes. And the director would have to say, ready, tape 2, take 2, bring the audio up, do all these things. Now we've had mechanical ways of doing this. It sounds like you got the start of you being able to just talk through a show. And I'm just wondering, do you see that as a few years away? Is it 5 years away, or are you doing it right now today?
So voice control.
We are actually
switch.
doing it directly today, and we use an app. This show was called Look Man No Hands. I'm using an app from our very good friend Adam Thau, which is called Action. races. And what is inside that app, if you tried it, there is a lot of tools that you can communicate with using your voice. This is using Apple text-to-speech services or other text-to-speech services inside the app. And you can actually use that to communicate directly through into mimoLive. The thing with Adam's new app is that is not two-way, so you just fire and forget the command to mimoLive, but you can have other tools that catch up on that one. And since this was a show that was called "Look My No Hands," I will be showing my hands, and just look at the background. I'm not going to do anything in mimoLive because that is a little bit too scary doing it live. But I can say Studio Purple. Studio Purple. Hey,
There you go.
cool.
You're reminding me of decades ago. There was a tool called Voice Navigator, and I got a demo of it, and I was playing with it. And I don't know why, but one moment I said, okay, I'm going to take the term, excuse my French, damn it, and I'm going to connect it to undo. Then I forgot about it. And about a month later, I was doing something. I went, damn it. And it undid the action. I thought I was going to die. It's one of the great moments in my computer life. Oliver Beidenbach, you want to come back in on this?
There's this document on GitHub. I've put the link into the Mukana. And I wanted to just point out, if you want to get started with that, mimoLive can be used for free if you download mimoLive and apply for a evaluation license. That evaluation license only has a little watermark in it, but then you can just try it yourself and play around with it. And it has the full functionality of mimoLive, so everything is at your disposal. And I encourage people to do that and let us know what the experience is like, so we can improve on the document and make it easier for everyone.
Reading through the panel chat, I'm not sure it came across audio-wise, but Adam Tao's app is called Action Phrase. So if you're looking for it and was interested, there you go. Peter Sargent.
So I started using the MCP to greatly simplify, interestingly enough, my companion installation when working with mimoLive. I used to have some very long, complex things that would use the various API calls to mimoLive to do things in a certain order and a certain timing. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And when Oliver published the MCP, I just said, write me a Python script that does this, whatever this is. And now that becomes one button on my, basically I tell Companion to call the Python script and it does the rest.
I would just encourage everyone that are coding or vibe coding with whatever model you're using. Just go get the MCP for mimoLive and get, as Oliver said, get the evaluation version of mimoLive and start playing with it. First, just try to give it simple instructions and let the tool that you're using learn more and more, and suddenly you can just as we did, we vibe coded the entire interface towards mimoLive. So we had the tool, the workflow and all the other things before, and when we wanted to integrate that with mimoLive, you used MCP and just had our cursor that I'm using to integrate all the code and the interface with the mimoLive. And I think it was done in like 30 minutes or something. It's just mind-blowing how quickly and how good it was. The code is, of course, read through multiple times, and it's really solid code, and the MCP is really good in helping you get that code up and running very, very quickly. But that is also due to the really, really advanced API that are existing inside mimoLive already.
John Edelson, to wrap it up.
I was just saying, it's sort of the march of the APIs, and I think it's interesting to think back. Very early on, Zoom opened up the API, so Oliver with mimoLive, Cinemaker, and now Ecamm all have Zoom built into it, but it really is built into it with their application to be able to talk through APIs. Now, essentially, Oliver's opened up the whole red box with his APIs. And I think we're just going to see more and more of things connecting together, like Peter was saying, using his companion. And again, I'm trying to think, what do we know from the past that's going to predict the future? And it's really interesting to me to see how we're going back to typical ways of how do you interface with things. You talk to it, you ask it to do things, but you have to have something smart enough to be able to understand you. Now we have a systems of doing that with the AI implementations of access to APIs and very powerful software.
And the ramifications for people who might have mobility issues and things like that are almost unimaginable. If you can just talk to things and get real work done.
I think just accessibility, but just in terms of production planning, Ronny talked about, having a sheet. I know Peter starts with a document in mimoLive, and that's sort of the run of the show, and that's the pre-production planning. And that was the whole model, good pre-production planning, figuring out how the show is going to do, and then execute them. Now, with AI, you can sort of automate that pre-production planning and then even still execute it. But, Ronny, when you talk about a blank document and talking your way through it and actually having that being produced, that's a seat of your pants video production. But it's pretty exciting. Nothing's better than live. Can you imagine if you ever seen a big football truck for an NFL football and all the people on different machines and instant replay and all that? Just imagine somebody being able to just call that out and the applications were able to take care of it.
May you live at interesting time. Next question.
Next up is Douglas Carmichael asking, can mimoLive pass high dynamic range? And if not, is that planned to be added?
Oh, Oliver, can you talk about future plans like that?
I can talk about, but then I would have to,
Yes. The traditional thing.
The traditional thing. Currently we can't do HDR due to some restrictions in the APIs that we use on macOS. But in the future, we will certainly be able to do this. We're waiting for some new APIs from Apple that may or may not appear. And also we have to update our core from currently using Quartz Composer, which is ancient technology in terms of
oh man, I haven't heard Quartz Composer in a long time.
and terms
people
of,
love that software, but that goes way back.
It's the core of the graphics in mimoLive right now. We've developed a replacement called Mimo Composer, which is basically a drop-in replacement, so it does the same thing, and we can just use the existing compositions and have it done in a more rendered in a more modern way using metal, and a lot of things are going to happen there. And one of the things is the color management is going to be in the modern P3 format, and HDR will be also available in Mimo Composer.
Nice.
So it's coming. I just don't know when. It's like, okay. I hope this century.
We won't pin you down any more than that. Next question.
Here's one from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Please share the infrastructure being used tonight. It is amazing on YouTube. Well,
I'm glad so. As we said, mimoLive is in right in the pipeline here. But Oliver, do you know more about what we're doing on the back end?
I think I'm the most qualified on the panel, so I just I grabbed this attention thing. So now you can't see. I can't share. I think I can't share the backend. We are running mimoLive on a Mac Studio M4. I think it's M4 Max at Guy Cochran's place. It's locked. mimoLive is locked into, or is has joined this Zoom meeting where all the panelists hang out in, and captures everyone's ISO feed into mimoLive, and then it composes the output. And it's being controlled through a Cloudflare tunnel, and right now the TD still has to log on to the machine and set up mimoLive there, but that's what I wrote the ML controller app for, so they won't have to do that in the future. And they are controlling what's going on through a remote control surface that is a web app, basically, with buttons for all the different layouts, and assigning people to the spots in the layouts, and turning things off and on is being done through a web interface that you can run on a touch device. I don't know if the current TD does that, or if they're using a mouse and keyboard. Yeah, that's the basic setup, and then mimoLive encodes it, and sends it to YouTube. We are doing a little trick, so the document is in 1080p, and we are upscaling it in the output to 1440p, I think, to send it to YouTube, so we get the VP9 encoding pipeline at YouTube, and that makes it look great. And as soon as I don't know if we are already doing 60 frames per second, but we're certainly ready to do that whenever the quality assurance people in office hours are satisfied with the testing. So
I know they're doing a lot of testing on after hours, the back end in a 60 frame world. So who knows? Ronny, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, just quickly, Oliver, that's a question to you from me. The ML controller app, that's on GitHub. Is that also open source? So can we fork it? And for those that doesn't know what fork is, can we use that code and reuse it in other products as well?
Yes, it's open source, and yeah, and you can just download the source and make your own. It's not very. I don't know if I would recommend using Claude to work on a copy, because sometimes it's better using in Claude. It's better starting fresh than using something that already exists. Because it probably, I don't know, I haven't looked at the code. It works, but it may have some very strange ways to do things, and a fresh copy of or a fresh session with Claude is maybe may have a better approach at things, and maybe using a different HTTP library or whatever, and so you can go ahead and fork the ML controller app, or just download and look at the code if you want to. But you don't even have to, because I think it'll save you like 5 minutes of Claude doing its thing. And it has some things that you don't need, probably. For example, Sparkle feed to update to new releases and things like that, that may not be necessary for the operation, or for you to create your own tool.
I am told that the TD, Alan Scott tonight, is using mouse and keyboard on a browser interface, no enhanced bandwidth, nor 60 frames per second tonight. So anyway, Ronny, did I catch you on the beginning of that, or we have one more question? So yeah, okay, let's go to our next question.
Douglas Carmichael is back with us. Ronny, you talk about using an MCP server. If the models are hosted in the cloud and the MCP server talks to them, isn't that a single point of failure?
Ronny, what say you?
Yes, definitely. So that is why we don't use that. So the MCP is just living in our coding environment, so where we do the development. So the development environment that is currently Cursor and some Claude. And the MCP is just, we use the MCP just for learning how to interact with mimoLive's APIs on a more detailed and advanced level than we would be doing if we just read the documentation ourselves. So the MCP is just for helping the AIs to understand how to interact with mimoLive. And then everything gets stored in code. And from then on, we don't use the MCP.
We have just about used up our time for tonight. I'm going to just quickly touch base with Oliver and or Ronny and just say, if anybody wants to reach out, is there any contact information you want to pass along? Oliver, for people who are interested in mimoLive or all of these APIs.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of office hours, and there's a Discord in office hours that you can go and interact with. We also have a mimoLive experts Discord. If you want to join that, I think the link to that is in the office hours Discord. I can also post that in Mukana, and that's the place to go to discuss this, and any of these, yeah.
Very cool. Don't forget, next week, our friend Taylor Sunderhaus is my guest, and what he's titling An Office Hours Success Story. So that should be fun. Don't forget, we are here every single day doing some show or another. Tomorrow, Wednesday, is audio day, so check that out on the morning show. And I guess it's time to say goodbye for all intents and purposes. We traditionally close doing two things, thanking everybody, thanking the panelists, thanking the back-end crew who are doing an amazing job, and thanking all of you who watch the show, our producers. Your questions are what drives us every time, so we truly appreciate your being a part of this whole adventure for us. The Tlaloc Traversal today for episode 2205, 5,000 miles. That is 8,000 kilometers or 42 million bananas for scale. Please watch the credits, and everybody who helped to make this show possible. We'll see you next Tuesday with our next Tuesday Focus. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Well done, everyone.